As his term in the Senate nears its end, Senator Francis Tolentino remains an active voice in some of the most pressing issues, including the controversial move to return the impeachment articles to the House of Representatives. Let's discuss that with Senator Tolentino himself, who now joins us live via Zoom. Magandang umaga po sa inyo at Happy Philippine Independence Day.
Araw.
Okay. Speaking of independence, there are those who say that the independence of the Senate has been compromised with what has been done in the past days, given that it seems the senator judges are the ones lawyering for the Vice President. What do you have to say to this?
Hindi naman po siguro totoo yun. That's a mere perception of some, but I believe that the Senate still is maintaining its stance. Have done this before several times. So, ito nangyari isang araw, isang gabi, likewise, a batch of the Senate's here.
Senator Francis, I think you're coming in a little bit choppy on our end. Baka sa sa audio po natin. If we can fix a little bit of that, no. Pero I think I heard you quite right, no. But when we talk about the constitutionality of the articles of impeachment and the procedures and the way it was carried over by the House to the Senate, isn't that supposed to be the job of the Supreme Court to determine its constitutionality? At pangalawa po, hindi po ba dapat yung defense ang nagbi-bring up po nung matters of constitutionality and not the judges themselves?
Hindi naman po. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, better.
Hindi naman po. Yung mga nagko-question, I've seen some footages asking why the judges themselves are moving for a dismissal. Hindi naman po ganon. Just to set the record straight, during that deliberation, I stood up and cited, kasi a lot of our legal luminaries are citing American jurisprudence. I even cited a recent American incident during the 2024 recent vintage lang, Gretchen. The United States Senate, just one day, April 16, 2024, April 17, 2024, the Senator himself, Senator Charles Schumer, moved for the dismissal of the case against Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of U.S. Homeland Security, on the ground that failed to comply with some requirements. So it's not unusual for a senator judge to himself move for the dismissal. But in this case, we never moved for the dismissal. Ang nangyari lang dito, we remanded. I'm not defending now the decision, but it has been a legal decision. So it's just a return to the lower house to comply, to certify that they compliant with certain constitutional requirements. You ask that hindi pa dapat Supreme Court? Hindi naman. Kasi as an impeachment court, we have full powers to inquire as to the validity of the documents, as to the compliance with other requirements imposed by the Constitution, etc., etc. So we stand firm that what the Senate did is on firm basic constitutional grounds.
Pero Senator, ano po kaya yung basihan nitong pagre-remand ng articles of impeachment? Pag tinignan niyo po yung konstitusyon, parang wala po kasing nakasulat doon na maaaring ma-remand ito back to Congress.
It's not the Constitution itself that should be scrutinized. It's the rule-making power of the Congress. And part of the rule-making power of the Congress during impeachment trials is for the Senate to have their own impeachment rules. So the Senate can do whatever it thinks would be necessary to clarify everything. So ito yung ginawa. So hindi ito pinagbabawal ng sa aligang batas to require other documents. So again, while I am not totally in favor of what transpired, kasi yung stand ko has been this, alam mo, Gretchen, yung sa akin, once the clock ends, midnight of June 13, tapos na yung 19th Congress and that the 20th Congress can no longer have jurisdiction. So sabi ko, dapat matapos natin ito ng 19th Congress. That's part of the number two uh, requirement that we were asked that we voted upon. Ito yung clarify ko, Director. And I think it's now subject to a petition before the Supreme Court.
Actually, I want to go to that. No, you were part. I mean, you mentioned this calendar, 18-day or 19-day impeachment trial calendar. But you also voted to remand. You were part of the 18.
Yeah. It's consistent, Gretchen, because the calendar that the indicative calendar which I propose, which has now been declared mooted because of what transpired, would always indicate that we end on June 30. And one of the items we voted upon was whether it can pass to the 20th Congress. I clarified this. Sabi ko, hindi tayo dapat tumawid, dapat tapusin natin ito ng 19th Congress. So there's no inconsistency there, Gretchen. Doon pa rin
Totoo po,
ako.
pero by remanding it, one of the demands of the Senate here is to get a resolution from the House if they still want to pursue the articles of impeachment. And that is the 20th Congress. So, effectively, because you voted to remand it, tatawid po talaga bago makakuha ng resolusyon, hindi po ba?
I stood up against that. When I voted, I explained my vote. Ang sabi ko, hindi dapat ito tumawid ng 20th Congress. And yesterday, Gretchen, I delivered a short manifestation that I be allowed, and I abbreviated it to dispense with eating out a lot of important minutes of the Senate. Instead, I inserted into the records a 10-page manifestation speech that why it will not carry over. So there's no consistency there. I never voted for the second item. I never voted that it would carry over to the 20th Congress. Yung pa rin yung stand ko. Yun din yung nakalagay, Gretchen, doon sa expedited trial calendar which I propose. Kaya nga, sinasabi nila, ba't walang trial calendar? Nag-submit ako ng trial calendar, pero hanggang 30th June lang tayo. And then, yung pag nagbutuhan, sabi ko, mali ito kasi ganito yon, Gretchen. No, yung nag-motion si Senator De La Rosa, if you will care to look at the record, sabi ni Senator De La Rosa, I move for the dismissal.
Yes.
Because it should not carry over to the 20th Congress.
Correct.
Binago lang yon na yung dismissal was the word dismissal was changed to remand, and later on it was changed to return. Pero yung essence ng motion ni Senator De La Rosa is for a dismissal because it should not carry over to the 20th Congress. That's why I agreed. Hindi ako pumapayag na malipat sa 20th Congress. And I can argue this even to the highest tribunal, before the highest tribunal, that the 20th Congress has not, and that this case would be functionally dismissed by 30 June 2025.
Okay, Senator, binanggit nyo nga po yung isa sa mga nabanggit nyo dun sa speech po ninyo, itong Jefferson Manual, kung saan sabi nyo hindi maaring tumawid. Pero pag binasa nyo po, ang nakasulat po dun, an impeachment is not discontinued by the dissolution of Parliament but may be resumed by the new Parliament. Yeah. Hindi po ba yun ang nakasulat doon?
There is a footnote in my speech because ganito yon, Gretchen. Lahat ng basis ngayon, yung mga nagsasabi na it can continue, they cite the British Parliament. The British Parliament is composed of two houses. The House of Commons and the House of Lords. The House of Commons, nagkakaisyon. The House of Lords, permanent po yun. For life po yung life peers, spiritual peers, and hereditary peers. There are 780 members of the House of Lords. Kaya continuing sila. The last hearing, the last impeachment trial conducted by the House of Lords was 1806. Ito yung inadapt ng US tradition din, ng US Constitution. Ito yung sinaside ni Jefferson. What they did in the US Senate, Judge Pickering case, Judge Lauterbach case, tuloy-tuloy, nagko-crossover sila because the US Senate is a continuing body. Ang US Senate, they have 100 senators. 67 lagi na iiwan pag may eleksyon. So they still maintain that two-thirds of 66. And they have a quorum. 33 ang nag-i-eleksyon sa kanila. Lahat ng case na yan na sinasite ng ating mga kaibigan sa bench at sa bar, abogado rin po ako, nagtuturo din po ako ng constitutional law, is on the basis of the 1935 Constitution, which was patterned after the U.S. Constitution. Yung 1935 Constitution natin, ang eleksyon is 8-8-8. Unlike today, our staggered elections for senators ay 12-12. So 8-8-8, 8 senators for every election cycle, meaning to say 16 will be remaining. So 16 would be sufficient to have a quorum as well as two-thirds to allow that carryover. But just the same, Gretchen, I still maintain, there is no word in the Constitution such as carryover. This is not an invitation for us to include intentions as voices. We rely on what is written in the Constitution. Yun din, kaya consistent ako dyan, Gretchen.
Oh, pero marami po akong nakausap ito sa show na ito and they say that the legislative function of the Senate in the House of Representatives is a different function from this their duty in the accountability of public officers as an impeachment court. So parang kung anong korte, kahit magbago yung miyembro, hindi naman daw po nagbabago yung function nung korte.
Allow me to rebut that. When you speak of courts, the courts that you're referring to, Court of Appeals, regional trial courts, these are permanent courts. We are referring to an impeachment trial court. This is not a permanent court. This is an ad hoc constitutional body. The other instances wherein they cite to my colleague Senator Benitez, sinasabi nila na National Continental versus National Canvassing Board case, it refers to a periodic created constitutional body. After every presidential election, we create a National Canvassing Board. Yun talaga ina-allow mag-carry over. The Senate Electoral Tribunal, it's a periodic constitutional body. But the impeachment court is not. So, yung sinasabi nila, let me go to your first argument, which I will debunk. Ang sinasabi nila, hindi ito a legislative function. I agree. But under the Constitution, the Congress is allowed to formulate their own rules. It has been sustained in several cases that the right of the Senate, the Congress to formulate their own rules would always be respected for being constitutional. And because of that, the Senate promulgated the rules. Ano yung sa rules? All business of the Senate would terminate at the end of each Congress. When you say all, ang ibig sabihin, lahat, in layman's term, in Black's dictionary, in Webster's dictionary, all would be, the meaning of all is the whole. So, ibig sabihin, hindi naman nilagay doon, all legislative matters, except impeachment, except non-legislative matters, nakalagay all. Unlike the U.S. Senate, pag sinabi nilang, because it's a continuing body, ours is a partially continuing body, they can still ratify treaties, the U.S. Senate, because it's a continuing body. And also because the power to ratify and concur, the power to concur with the appointments, sa kanila yon, they can still continue. I've seen that, I've witnessed that. Tayo, we raised for time. Yesterday, the commission appointment stopped because tapos na. Yung ratification of treaties, tapos na rin. Pero dun sa rules natin, all. What is the meaning of all? Lahat. Lahat. Yung rules. Unless that rules...
Senator, ultimately, this will be... Ultimately, this will be settled by the Supreme Court. But the question is, bakit hindi na lang po ituloy yung pagdinig? Dahil if the interest is to find out the truth, this will also be brought up and has been brought up at the Supreme Court. Kung baga nandyan na yan, nakabinbin na yan, nandyan na po yan. Pero ang tanong ng mga tao, sige, go ahead.
That's why I offered the expedited calendar. nung in-offer ko yung expedited calendar, the pundits, all those who are now lawyers, are against it. Napakabilis daw. Sabi, 19 days. Ang bilis. But remember the second Trump case, 5 days. Yung Capitol riot case, 5 days. The impeachment court convened, and thereafter, after 5 days, they were able to render a verdict, Gretchen.
Well, there are questions though as to what is happening because, as we know, impeachment is a political exercise. Do you
Correct.
think that the voting yesterday was a huge indicator of the mood at the Senate, 18-5, of what the outcome could be if this trial does proceed?
I cannot prognosticate. I cannot divine the thinking of the other senator judges. These intentions then, and now we're going again to the realm of intentions. Intentions are within one's head. Yung sa atin kung ano yung written. Ano yung written? Yung boto nila. Kasi nasa transcript yun. So hindi ko alam kung ano yung nasa isip nila.
Okay, Senator Risa Ontiveros has said that the move to remand back to the House has been the playbook all along of the Duterte bloc. What do you think about that?
Hindi ko alam kung ano yung sinasabi niya. Yung sa akin, I just explicated the constitutional reasons why it should not carry over, because the words carry over cannot be found in our 22,000 worded constitution. Inisa-isa ko na yan, wala talagang carry over. Sa akin, what is written is the law, not the intentions.
Okay, Senator, there are those also who say that maybe you are returning to the fold of the Duterte bloc, that you are, given the results of the last elections, na kayo po ay pumupunta na doon dahil nga marami na raw po natatakot pagdating sa susunod na halalan dito sa lakas ng mga Duterte, lalong-lalo na nung kanilang following.
Matagal pa yun, Gretchen. I still maintain the constitutionality and the basis of what I've spoken. As a constitutional law professor, as a student of U.S. constitutional law, even if you describe me as a constitutional law junkie, I think what I've said is correct, Gretchen. I've studied the U.S. Constitution for several years and even took a bar exam on U.S. Constitution. So wala talagang basis yung paglipat sa 20th Congress. So it has nothing to do with politics. It has something to do with the integrity of our Constitution and my continuing defense of the Senate as a strong bastion of our democracy.
Senator, bilang panghuli, dahil kayo po ay e-exit na dito sa Senado, ano po masasabi po ninyo yung pinaka key reforms na inyong nagawa ng inyong opisina, and what unfinished business would you still like to see continue?
I just opened the newspaper today. I saw a flag raising ceremony yesterday in Mavulis Island in Batanes. It's the last frontier of the Philippines before one crossed the Taiwan Strait. Kinikilabutan po ako, lalong-lalo na sa mga hindi nakakaalam, na si Senator Tolentino po ang nagpatayo ng Mavulis Naval Detachment to serve as not just as an inspiration for our soldiers, but to serve as a flagpole for our independence. Kinikilabutan ako doon. So I look forward for the 20th Senate to continue what I've started, strengthening our maritime defense posture, not just within the West Philippine Sea, but including the Talampas ng Pilipinas, which I have christened as that name. Our independence as a nation, not to be bullied. Our independence as a freedom-loving archipelagic nation that should stand amongst other countries proud as the first independent country, first republic in Asia. And I look forward likewise to the independence of our laborers. I'm sorry we were not able to ratify the increased wage hike for them. I look forward to further independence of our LGUs. I look forward to the independence, likewise, of our health workers. Independence being a very broad term, Gretchen. So marami sana tayong gagawin pa, pero just the same, we respect the decision of the electorate. But Senator Tolentino will be continuing as a law professor, as an advocate of our maritime laws in the West Philippine Sea, and a lot of other things. So I'd like to thank you, Gretchen, for this last interview with you. Perhaps this is my independence, likewise, from my daily routine, likewise freedom, so to speak. So today, as we wave the Philippine flag, I join the rest of the country in observing Independence Day. Mabuhay ka, Gretchen. Morning Matters, mabuhay din po.
Well said. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagpapaliwanag tungkol dito sa nangyari sa Senado at pati na rin sa mga nangyari nung mga nakaraang taon. We have Senator Francis Tolentino joining us on Morning Matters, of course, as the Senate adjourns sine die tomorrow. That's June 13.